Okay, we are entering the final stretch of the material we need to cover in Code.org's Unit 3, Animation and Games. We figured out how to use keys and our mouse to make things move. So now to take this next step, we are going to learn about collision detection to make the objects more realistic with borders, boundaries, being able to touch and move each other. So this one starts out, finally, it calls for celebration. There is no prediction. It's just test it out and see what happens. So we run it, and we see a rabbit walking towards a robot. That good old bowl of stew that spilled earlier must have been refilled. And as they touch, they both stop, and the animation changes. All right, so obviously going through what you think would need to happen. The next level is where the good folks at code.org really are showing off. So if we click run, we can see it, and we've got all this code, right? We've got our variables we can follow. We've got our backdrop, which is a background. We've got the bunny, we've got the robot, we've got the dinner, which is the bowl, and then we get to all this, okay? This is checking multiple conditions. So this is saying that if the bunny's x position is greater than the dinner's x position, and the bunny's x position minus the dinner's x position is less than the bunny's width, then it just gets really insane. And if you zoom out, it goes further to the right. So we could scroll down and go over. So this is quite complicated. And then we need that to be true, or all of this, which if you follow is actually just some mathematical expressions, just the number of blocks make it look a little more complicated than it is. Long story short, you don't have to know how to do this. We just need to know that there is a nice person somewhere at code.org that did all of that. And instead of having to do that crazy math thing, they developed a block or a function that just says is touching and allows you to check to see if one sprite is touching the other sprite. All that other stuff is going on in the background. So the computer is still doing all those calculations and checking for less thans and the width divided by 2 and all that good stuff. But all we need to know is we can just say, hey, is the bunny touching the dinner? And if it is, we want this to happen. Okay, so that simplifies everything so much more for us. Okay, it wants us to check that it's touching the dinner, then drag the is touching block into the if statement. So I've done that one already, so I need to remember to reset. But that's where it is. It is in our sprite menu, is touching, and we have sprite and target in our little example here, but they're both going to be sprites. Sometimes the target is more important in the order, but either way, if the bunny is touching the dinner or if the dinner is touching the bunny, it's the same thing. Okay, I will start over on this one so that we can begin fresh. So right now we have a blender that is shaking. There's an apple dropping. So we want it to be like this image right here where the blender only shakes while the apple is touching it, but it's given the illusion of an apple dropping into the blender and running. So I'm going to walk through how to do this. So right now the blender is shaking, but we want to move that inside a condition. So I'm going to go to my control. I'm going to say if, go to my sprite menu and say if apple is touching blender, then I want it to shake. All right, so I'm just going to drag that code. So it's not, now it is. And then you can kind of see the apple kind of fall in the background. One thing that I like to do with this, it's a little bit extra, is I'll also change the apple's visibility to false so we don't see it falling behind it. So when we do it that way, it looks more like the apple just fell in the blender, and you don't see it falling through on the background. So just a nice extra touch there. All right, moving right along with this one, we are rocking and rolling. We are at level 5, and we've got something to debug. So let me start over. All right, so we've got that up. I think I had a student today that had this issue. The balloon is popping before the tack touches it, and this code is gone. let me see if it will restore a previous version for me. It does. Okay, so that's good. So something more recent has happened. Okay. So for my students, hopefully this is fixed when you're looking at it in code.org, but I did have somebody that had an issue with the code being blank today. But this is what it looks like to start with. So there is a debug block to get more information. So if we drag that debug out and change it to true, it puts what common terminology or jargon is a hitbox around the balloon. Now the issue is there's a hitbox around the thumbtack. I can control it with my directional arrows. And once those hitboxes touch, all right, then the sprite is going to change. Then it's going to change to that popped image. So in this one, the way we actually fix that is we go into the animation view, and the balloon, if we notice all of this extra space around the balloon is causing it to be part of the hitbox. So there is a crop the sprite button. Sometimes this works great. Sometimes you have to manually set the hitbox. In this case, we can use the crop sprite, and it will make it a much easier process. I'm just going to click this button, and it sort of resizes the frame to fit around the edges of the sprite. So now if I go back to my code and run it, all right, the hitbox is much more realistic, so that now all right, I get closer to the balloon before it pops. Okay, and we've got a couple of more practice problems with some debugging. All right, so this one, the bunny sprite should change to a new animation when it touches the sun sprite. Figure out why it doesn't react. So right now we've got a sad bunny, and it's still not getting any better for the bunny. So we've got a variable called sun. We've got one called bunny. We set it, bunny sad, and we said if the sun is touching the bunny. All right, if you haven't figured out the issue, take a moment and look at it. Okay, if it's not in the draw loop, it just runs once very quickly. So this is being tested, but it's tested at the beginning. All right, the sun is not touching the bunny, so this evaluates to false, and then we get in the loop and just stay in the loop. So I need to move this inside the draw loop so that it's every frame is being checked, and now we've got a happy bunny. Alrighty, a little bit slow reaction times today from code.org, but all right, the circle colliders. All right, we're going to learn a little bit more about our debug sprite options. So right now, again, if we run, I've got 2 coins that are supposed to give the illusion of sticking together, but with those hitboxes, if I were to change them to false and I can't see them, and I'll show you why I'm doing that in a second. All right, this is what a user would see, and it's like they're stopping before they touch. We want them to touch. Okay, so what I'm going to do is change that back to true for a moment. Okay, and I'm going to get introduced to a new tool that is the set collider type. So under coin 1, I am going to, that will be the sprite. I want to set the collider for, notice the default is rectangle. I want to change that to circle. And then I'm going to copy that and set that to be with coin 2 so that they both, and now when I run it, they're circles, and now it allows them to touch and stop as intended. Okay, so that new little tool, set collider. All right, our next practice problem is a scared mouse. This one has changed. I think it used to be in front of a park bench, and now the cat's on the kitchen sink. I also think the mouse is upside down at the moment, or it's just a really weird mouse with something on its head. I'm not quite sure. Let's go to our animation and see. Yeah, something, that's an odd looking mouse. So in the example, okay, yeah, I guess we just have a odd looking mouse. I think the I is in the wrong spot. Anyway, okay. So, we want the mouse to, as it gets close to the cat, so notice program the mouse to run the other way and the cat to look down and meow if the mouse is touching the cat. So notice it gets really close. So we are going to update some stuff. So this one's all jacked up. So, all right, we've got our kitchen, we've got our cat, we've got our mouse, we've got our draw sprites, and our mouse has a velocity of 4. So we are going to just do a simple conditional and use the is touching. So if mouse is touching cat, all right, we are going to change, not the cat, the mouse's velocity to -4, which is the opposite direction. And in the video, they also have it turn around. If I go to animations, I do have a mouse left, so that's what I'm going to use. And I really think this mouse, let me do this. I'm just curious. I guess I would have to do it for both frames. I'm just curious. Okay, all sorts of weird stuff going on. Okay, I'm going to undo those turns. Okay, that is the oddest looking mouse I have ever seen, and I can't get over it. But I do have that different option, so I need to also set the animation before it moves. So the mouse, I'll set the animation to be the mouse left. Okay, also I will set the animation of the cat to the cat meow. All right, and let's see what happens. All right, there we go. All right, and if I want the mouse to scurry away faster than it came, I could change that velocity to like a -8, so kind of make it run away twice as fast as it approached the cat. There we go. Okay. Alrighty, we've made it to the assessment problem for lesson 20, and we're moving right along. We'll start over from the beginning. Okay, this one I think is really quick and easy. We want to turn the horse into a unicorn. So again, we are going to, if the name of the sprite is horse, and the name of the other one is rainbow, so we're going to say if the rainbow is touching the horse, we're going to set the animation of the horse to be the unicorn image. And once this is changed, even though it's not permanently touching, once that animation has been changed, there's nothing saying to change it back, so it will forever be a unicorn. And that is it. Okay, moving right along. Okay, we are on our challenge problems. All right, so this first one, I will start over. It will take a little bit of kind of going through, but it is worth it because some of you, when you get to the end and you want to make your own project and you are perhaps creating a sprite or using an image you find online, it may be helpful. Okay, so this is how you can manually adjust a hitbox, or the collider as it's called here in code.org. Okay, so there is the collider type, and then there's also parameters that go with it. So for my roller, I want to set collider. Now, right now I know absolutely nothing, but if I hover over that, Notice the different parameters. There's type, then there's X offset, Y offset, width/radius, height, rotation offset. Okay, so that's a lot to digest. So I'm going to start from the beginning. The type we can all establish. Okay, does it need to be circular or rectangular? I'm going to do this one as a rectangle simply because the ends are a little bit more narrow than the middle, and that could be problematic possibly. Doesn't have to be, but I think the rectangle will just be more simple. The X offset and Y offset, that's kind of the center sliding left, right. The Y offset would be the center sliding up or down. The width would be, if it's a rectangle, it's width, or a radius if it's a circle, or an ellipse, technically. The height is going to be the same no matter what. And then the rotation offset is if it's going to be rotated clockwise, counterclockwise. So also tricky with this is the way the parameters are set up. The type is already there, but this one I can already tell you I'm going to have to rotate. So even if I don't want to change the X and Y offset, I still have to have parameters there, and they have to have a value. So I'm going to click this little arrow to add those parameters, and I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 additional spots. 2, 3, 4, 5. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the X and Y offset to be 0. All right, the width, I could go to my grid and say, okay, well, about how wide is that? Kind of hard to tell because it is diagonal. But let's just say the width is, for right now, 100, and then we can play with that later. The height, okay, again, it's diagonal, but it's kind of covering almost the whole thing if I were to rotate it straight up. So I'm going to do a height of 380, which, again, I can narrow down later. And then the rotation, so this does look like it's rotated slightly. I'm going to say it's rotated about 30 degrees. Okay, clockwise. So if it were straight up and down. So now if I'm going to turn the grid off so you can see what happens when I reset and run. Okay, so now you can see that that 30 degrees was good, but my width was way off. My height was also way off. So I'm going to cut that width down to 50. I'm going to cut that height down to 320. And okay, my height again is, so let me go down to 200. There we go. Okay, so we can just kind of keep playing with it. So again, this is where it's just a little bit of trial and error. I'm going to go down to 38 and 175 for my width and my height. Again, there you can see, okay, well, I've almost got it with the width and the height. Maybe I took it a little bit too far. So let me make that like a 178. All right, and that is pretty close. So that's obviously going to be better for my gameplay if I have it. Again, I can nitpick. Just to show you like the XY offset, if I were to change that X offset to like a 20, it's going to slide it over to the right 20 pixels. So I want that to be a 0. The Y offset would slide it up. Like if I want to slide it up just a hair, that'll kind of, or yeah, down, I guess I should say. So if I do like a -2, it's going to move it up slightly. So again, I'm going to leave those at 0, 0 because I don't really need to change it, but that's what those do. Okay, so that hopefully is helpful. All right. Our next challenge, this is add points on collision. This is where we really start to be able to make some games and have a little bit of fun to be able to have a score. So this one has some stuff going on that we have not learned yet, but we can see we've got some text and it's counting our points, and we can use the directional arrows to move this ghost. And as it touches the coin, while it's touching it, my points are just going crazy, okay? So this program does that, but we just want to get 1 point. There are multiple ways. The easiest way is to move a sprite. So this is kind of showing you add a line of code so that at least one sprite moves to a random location. Okay, so there's a couple of tricks with this. So I have my condition already. If ghost is touching coin, the points are going to go up, but they're going up continuously while they're touching. So I want to change the position of the coin. So I want to update, and I don't know why that's been happening in the last few days. Okay, there we go. So I'm actually going to put this here. So I'm going to do coin.x, and I'm going to do a random number from 0 to 400. So that means my coin can move anywhere, left or right, across the screen. I'm going to do the same thing with coin.y. So my coin will get a new XY position. Then I will add the point. So hopefully, now occasionally this will still kind of bug out and it will regenerate and still be touching the ghost. But in general, now when I touch it, it moves somewhere else and I just get 1 point. Because I have it moving that time, it still found a way. I could slow my frame rate down maybe to fix that. But in general, usually it just gives me 1 point. But if it regenerates it in the same spot, I may get a double add. Alrighty. And then that is all there is to that one. Alrighty, so if you did those two for my students, that's enough. But just in case anybody wanted to see this one, we'll go down to the if-else challenge. So it says use an if-else to change the emoji's mood. So program the emoji to smile if it's touching the donut, otherwise the emoji should be sad. So right now, all right, I've already got my code there. So that I've got conditions to do that. So for my controls, so I'm going to say if, I'm going to find my is touching. All right, if emoji is touching, it is donut. Then we are going to set the animation to happy face. Else, I'm just going to copy that set animation and make that a sad face. And then that is going to be the emoji that we want to update. So now we reset and run. And as long as it's touching the donut, it's happy. And I could also add it so that it changes location if I wanted to. I don't think I see a preview. So that's kind of it. And then to relocate that donut, we would do the same thing we did before, but it kind of defeats the purpose of it changing because it would only change, for a split second. Okay, the last challenge, that was more of a freestyle, so there's no set thing to do. So again, for my students, if you just really need some help with this one and you wanted to do it, I'll be happy to help you. But this one is just more of a freestyle. So it says use what you've learned to create an animation of two foods that combine into a new, different food when they touch. So again, I think if you've made it this far, you could figure out how to do that. But if you have a question, please let me know. Alrighty, and we are done with lesson 20.